Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Scoops 2024 AFL Trade Wrap Club by Club Review. Please remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on the bell for all notifications. We're aiming for 24 likes for this video. What did I say, 24? Just felt like saying 24. Now, I'll go through each club, club by club, in alphabetical order. I'll tell you who I think won the trade period, and I'll give a team grading out of 10. So let's start right off with the Adelaide Crows. But one thing I want to say too, there'll be plenty of draft coverage for the AFL and AFLW coming up over the coming months, as there has been already. And obviously still have the AFLW content throughout their season that's going on right now. And the AFLW trade period when it comes around. But for this video, we'll talk about the men's 2024 AFL trade period club by club review, my grading out of 10. We'll start off with the Adelaide Crows. They brought in overall. These are overall. I'm not going through each trade individually. I'm going as a whole. So for Adelaide, they brought in James Peatling from the Giants, Isaac Cumming from the Giants as a free agent, Alex Neil-Bullen from Melbourne, future third from Melbourne and GWS, and a future fourth from GWS. Out went Elliot Himmelberg, pick 28, 46, and a future second. So to essentially gain three solid players for 28 and a future second and Himmelberg is a big tick in my eyes. So for the Crows, I'm going to give them an 8 out of 10. I really am going to give the Crows an 8 out of 10. I thought, from what they were dealt with, they got it done, and they got James Peatling and all these future picks as well. So really, and that's for gaining a guy, not losing someone. Elliot Himmelberg's no loss, let's be real. He's joined the Suns. Neil-Bullen's a very serviceable player. Isaac Cummings the same when injury-free. And James Peatling, he's had an amazing back half of the season. I'm really surprised he chose the Crows, but the Crows have got a good one there. All three of them, Peatling, Cumming, and Neil-Bullen. So an 8 out of 10 for me for the Crows. Brisbane Lions, they needed draft picks, and that's what they secured. Pick 27, 34, 42, 43, 49, 66, and a future third, which is tied to Melbourne. Out went Harry Sharp to Melbourne, no loss. Pick 20, pick 73, and a future second. So the main parts out of this is, from the draft number, you go like, well, these are picks 27 plus, so who cares? Well, they need points, the Brisbane Lions. They need to accumulate points, and they've done that for Will Ashcroft and Sam Marshall when the bids come. They've lost Harry Sharp. Again, he wasn't getting a game. They lost a future second, though, tied to Carlton. So that's the only major part they lost. But all these points, picks will accumulate points for Will Ashcroft and Sam Marshall. I mean, they didn't do amazing. They didn't do bad. They did what they had to do. So I'm giving the Lions a 7 out of 10. If you look at the fact of they got their players in that they needed, the points, for the players they want in through the academies and father-son. Right. So they're a 7 out of 10. Let's move on to the Blues, who some people say stole the trade period. They brought in Haynes from the Giants, pick 3 from West Coast, 38, 63, 68. In a future second, they lost Matty Kennedy to the Bulldogs, Matt Owis to the Eagles, pick 12, 34, 66. A future first, which is tied to Hawthorn, and a future second. Hawthorn. No, sorry, they got that to Hawthorn, gave that to Hawthorn. So they lost pick 12. Matt Kennedy, Matt Owis, and a future first and a second. And their main acquisition was pick 3, Haynes, and a future second. Now, so how I see this is pick 3 went in, pick 12 went out. They had 14 at one point, but obviously that was untraded. So really, overall, you can say, well, they didn't have 14. That trade in isolation was a bit interesting. They got 3 for 12 and 14. But overall, 14 is out of the picture because they never had it to begin with. So pick 3 and a future second and Haynes for pick 12, a future first and a future second and Matt Kennedy. So 3 and a future second. There's a future second in and out. So I'll cancel that. So they really lost pick 12, a future first, Matt Kennedy and Matt Owis for pick 3 in Haynes. So there comes risks of this, pick 3 is a valuable pick. But in a deep draft, I don't understand why people are saying they've done really well. They've done serviceable, and that's all I'm going to grade them. I'm going to give the Carlton Football Club a 5 out of 10. I don't see how people are saying that they stole the trade period. They didn't. Matt Kennedy is a very serviceable player. Matt Owies, how he wasn't given a contract is ridiculous. So, and then they lost a future first. So I don't see how you can say they've done well. And they lost pick 12. So they lost pick 12 and a future first for 3. But they lost Kennedy and Owies, who I rate highly. And seemed Carlton did too. They played them a lot. But they didn't want to keep them, which is just staggering. They keep Brody Kemp, who doesn't join the Saints. The Saints offered a future second for Brody Kemp, and they denied it. Just shows that they weren't as good as people said they were. I would have taken Brody Kemp for a future second and took it and run as if I was Carlton, but they didn't. So, yeah, 5 out of 10. The Pies, they brought in Dan Houston. They got the man that everyone was chasing. St Kilda wanted him. Bulldogs wanted him. Carlton wanted him. North Melbourne wanted him. Melbourne wanted him, but Melbourne didn't want Dan Houston. Sorry, Dan Houston didn't want Melbourne, as he said in an interview recently, as of early as today. They brought in Harry Perryman as a free agent from the Giants and pick 58. Out went John Noble, Joe Richards, a future first and 36. So Perryman was as a free agent, but in isolation, they've gained Houston and Perryman. For Noble, Richards, and a future first is the main picks there. So that's a win. That's a win right there. Future first for Houston is fair enough, absolutely. Perryman is an upgrade on Noble and Richards. And quite frankly, individually as trades, Perryman would be a pick around 20. Houston would be about 2 firsts. So, and they didn't lose 2 firsts. Those 2 first rounders are essentially Noble and Richards. So they're both not worth first rounders. So the Pies did really well this trade period. I'm giving them a 9 out of 10, the Pies. So the next team I'm going to go through is Essendon. They brought in picks 28, 40, 46, 53, 54, 65 in the future first, which is Melbourne's. Out went Jake Stringer to the Giants, pick 9 in the future third, which went to Melbourne with pick 9. So Isaac Keiko, a guy in their academy, we bidded on around pick 10, so Essendon have to get rid of it. So it's a similar position to what Gold Coast will be and what Brisbane had to do. So they're accumulating points for Isaac Keiko. They bring in a future first. So essentially they'll get Kako and Kako and a future first and 28 for Stringer and pick 9, which, to be fair, in reality, Kako will be at around pick 10 anyway. So they get him and they get a future first. So Essendon did okay, nothing bad, more good than bad. So I'm going to give Essendon a 7 out of 10. Now let's move on to Fremantle, shall we? Fremantle brought in Shai Bolton, pick 14 and a future third. They lost pick 10, 11, and 18. That's all they really did. It depends how highly you rate Shai Bolton. So it's Bolton and 14 for 10, 11, and 18. I don't think Bolton is worth anything more than a late first round pick. He was contracted, so that I understand they have to give up a little bit more than they probably wanted to. But overall, I said at the time this trade was bad for Fremantle because I don't trust Shai Bolton to be the man. He'll have much better midfielders around him like Brayshaw, Sarong, Young, Fife even as well. Whereas at Richmond, they've got basically no one, and all their experienced players were either injured or past it. So this trade, though, for Freo, I just give him a 5 out of 10. Like, I don't think it's that good, to be honest. I was tempted to give him a 4, but if Bolton does become good, it'll look a bit better. So I'm going to give him a 5. I'll be a bit conservative here. Geelong, well, they literally did one thing. That was bringing Bailey Smith with pick 45. Out went pick 17 and 38. Bailey Smith, yes, a good player, coming back from an ACL injury, out of contract, the threat of the preseason draft. They'll acquire Jack Martin as a delisted free agent. That's confirmed that all happens. It's not official, as it opens November 1st. So if Timmy married from my Saints to the Pies, which I'm not over still. So essentially Bailey Smith for pick 17 and a slide of picks from 38 to 45. So it's essentially valued Bailey Smith at around 17.25 range, which is fair enough. So, I mean, Geelong didn't do bad here. In fact, I'm going to give Geelong a 6 out of 10. They did nothing else. So, yeah, whatever. I think they won the deal individually against the Bulldogs, though, which was their only trade period stuff they did. But Gold Coast, they brought in, now you got to bear with me here, they brought in Daniel Rioli from Richmond, John Noble from the Pies, Elliot Himmelberg from from Adelaide, pick 39, pick 51, pick 61, pick 70, pick 76, a future first from Collingwood, future first from Port Adelaide. So, look, I think they did reasonably well, to be honest, because they acquired 2 future firsts, right, with Daniel Rioli, John Noble. So Rioli, Noble, and 2 future firsts for Lukosius, pick 6 and 13, 23, 29, and 50 went out. Depends. Now, I understand that pick 13 had to go out because they're going to bring in Leo Lombard, which is why there's a bunch of late picks. So it's Lombard, Noble, Rioli, right, and 2 future firsts. Lukosius, I think, is a big out. Pick 6 and 13. 6 was the Rioli trade, which I will not agree with them. And that's heavily going to impact my decision-making here. They should have traded one of those future firsts for Dan Rioli, more than likely of Port Adelaide, as they'll probably finish higher than Collingwood, with 23 maybe because he's contracted, and that's it. If Gold Coast wouldn't accept that, Richmond, then let them keep him. It doesn't really matter. But Gold Coast value his run and carry off halfback Dan Rioli very highly. I would have given them almost a 10 out of 10 Gold Coast, but because of the Dan Rioli trade, I'm going to give them a 7.5 out of 10, as I feel they did better than Essendon and slightly better than the Brisbane Lions, who I had it at 7 as well. Right. GWS, they brought in Jake Stringer from Essendon, pick 16, 21 in the future second, tied to Adelaide. Out went Peatling, Perryman, Haynes, Cumming, 53, future third, and future fourth. 16 and 21, they have draft pick number 15 as well. Jake Stringer, I mean, he doesn't have to be the X Factor player consistently because you've got Toby Green, Toby Bedford, Jake Riccardi, Jesse Hogan, guys like that in the forward line. So he may not attract the best key defender now like he was doing at Essendon. So he got a 2-year deal, which is what he wanted. But the Giants, they lost all these guys, not because they wanted to trade them out, because they wanted to leave for opportunity, and they were all out of contract. So for the Giants, I'm going to give them a 4.5 because I feel like, they couldn't help losing the players they did, but if they were playing some of them, they would have stayed, I feel. Sounds a bit harsh, but in fact, I know what? I am going to give them a 5.5 actually, because they were better than Carlton. So, yeah, it's an interesting one to grade, I feel, but here we are. And same as Freo, they were slightly better than I feel because they gave up a lot for Bolton, Freo, and Carlton gave up a lot while losing Kennedy and Owies and pick 12. So let's move on to the Hawks, shall we? The Hawks brought in Tom Barrass late in the trade in the last 10 minutes. Josh Battle was a free agent from the Saints. Barrass from the Eagles, obviously. Future first, second, and fourth. They went out. That was sorry. Went out was 14 to future first, which has gone to West Coast. Future second and third, which are also going to West Coast. So, again, I feel like Battle and Barrass is awesome a future first and second. They brought in Barrass, Battle, future first, future second as the main picks for 14, a future first and a future second. So we cancel out a future first and a future second. Okay. They essentially then brought in overall Barrass and Battle for pick 14, which is unbelievable because both those players are worth at least 14 on their own. So you have to say that the Hawks are one of the sides that stole the trade period. And I'm going to give the Hawks a 10 out of 10. I mean, I thought they stuffed up when they traded 14, but looking at it overall now, it looks probably better than what we may have first thought. So pretty good for the Hawks. Melbourne. And by the way, one thing I want to say about Hawthorn, just because they brought in Barras and Battle and still have Sicily and Scrimshaw and Frost and Co in the back line, doesn't mean they're guaranteed to be top 4 or win the premiership like some people say. I'm going to tell you right now, they're not even guaranteed to make the top 8. So just calm down on the expectations there. But for the trade period, 10 out of 10. Melbourne, they brought in Tommy Campbell from the Saints as ruck support for Max Gawn, Harry Sharp, a depth option from Brisbane, and pick 9. They lost Alex Neil-Bullen, picks 40, 49, 54, 65, future first, and future third. Melbourne, they did absolutely nothing. They gained pick 9 and lost Neil-Bullen, a future first, and a future third. Nothing special for Melbourne. So I'm going to give them a 4.5 out of 10. And they also could have lost Clayton Oliver, Petrarca, and Pickett. All 3 wanted to leave. We all know that. Just Melbourne let them. The Oliver and Petrarca in particular, they definitely wanted to go. And Cosy Pickett had homesickness. So, yeah, they kept them. Doesn't mean they had a good trade period at all. It was a disaster. They wanted Dan Houston. Dan Houston on radio today said that Melbourne had some things going on there, which scared him away from even considering them. Didn't even meet with them. So, yeah, that's overall a poor trade period. So 4.5 is probably generous for them as well. Let's move on to North Melbourne. They brought in Luke Parker, Caleb Daniel, Jack Darling, and Jacob Costanti. Picks 25, 44, and 68. You know what? Overall, I think they did really well. 3 players of experience. A former first-round draft pick in Costanti, a small forward. Darling, some experience at the forward line. Caleb Daniel will play off halfback on a 4-year deal. Luke Parker will be an experienced mid, forward, and leader at the club. So they really gave up 25 for Parker and Daniel. So they win there. So the Roos, I'm actually giving them an 8 out of 10, believe it or not. They tried their best to get Dan Houston. They couldn't secure him. He didn't really want to go there. So you can't really blame him for Houston not wanting to go there. So I'm giving the Roos an 8 out of 10. Nice and simple, and they did it pretty well. Adelaide. They brought in Jack Lukosius, Rory Atkins, Joe Richards, pick 13, 29, 36, and 50. They lost Dan Houston, a future first, which was their own, pick 39 and 58. It depends how highly you rate Jack Lukosius, and I rate him very highly as a first-round pick around the 15 range. Houston's a gun that they're going to miss that's joined the Pies. So essentially, the main parts of this overall trades for Adelaide, they got in Lukosius and pick 13 and 29. 13, 29 and Lukosius for Houston and a future first, which isn't amazing, but it's not bad. So for Port Adelaide's trade period, I'm going to give them a 6 out of 10. I mean, they didn't lose Ivan Solder, who wanted to go to St Kilda. Then St Kilda said no because of his injury history, which I question still, whether that's the actual reason why St Kilda didn't want him or not. Oh, they got someone else in mind. I'll have to wait and see. Richmond. They brought in picks 6, 10, 11, 18, 20, and 23. Lost Dan Rioli, Sho Bolton, Liam Baker, Jack Graham, 32, 43, 45, 51, 61, 70, 76 in the future third, which went out of Richmond, which was their own. And obviously, when they had pick 14, they on-traded it as well. And pick 42, which was a compensation pick for Jack Graham. So it's hard to tell. Pick 6, 10, 11, 18, 20, 23 is so valuable. So they've got, now we know they got pick 1 and everything like that, but in the trade period overall, they've acquired pick 6, 10, 11, 18, 20, and 23. So that's 5 additional picks in the top 23 to what they already had, which they have 8 overall. But we can't include the other 3. It's only the 5 they've acquired. Dan Rioli, Shy Bolton, Baker, and Graham are the major outs. So Graham is worth a pick in the 30s. So 23, they win there. Baker around 20, which is around the mark. Shy Bolton and Dan Rioli, they've essentially got for pick 6, 10, 11, and 18. And overall, actually looks pretty good. But then again, they lost so much experience. So it's really hard to grade the Tigers. They did really well. The players wanted to leave, I guess, but they didn't have to let them all go. So for Richmond, I feel like I've got to give them an 8.5 out of 10 because they were better than North Melbourne. And some of the clubs around them, like Essendon, they were better than. So I have to give them a higher rating than Essendon, which was 7. So they get 8.5. Now, we move on to my Sainers. They brought in Jack McRae from the Bulldogs, pick 8 through the compensation pick for Josh Battle, pick 32. They lost Josh Battle, Tommy Campbell, and pick 27. So the main parts of this is they acquired pick 8 and McRae for Battle and 27. Didn't want to lose Josh, but he wanted to go to Hawks as a free agent, so wish him all the best. Jack McRae, the inaugural Scoops medal winner. I'm so pumped to finally have Jack McRae at the Saints. Been a big fan of Jack McRae, hence why he won my Scoops medal in the first ever installment of the Scoops medal. The inaugural Scoops medal winner was Jack McRae. And pick 8 through the Battle compensation, 32 for Battle and 27 essentially. So we did really well. Would have been nice to bring in another ruck or bring in Brody Kemp, but it wasn't to be. Carlton will let him go for a future second, which I think is a bit overs, but he was contracted. So I would have been happy if St Kilda did that, considering if we were to make the top 8, it'd be a pick around 30-something, which is about Brody Kemp's value, to be honest. But disappointing that Carlton wouldn't accept that, because it would have made the trade bit a lot better for the Saints. They would have got an instant replacement for Josh Battle, but the Saints will look at some other rucks and backline key defender option types through the SSP period and the draft and delisted free agency. Wouldn't be shocked if we look at Ethan Phillips from Hawthorn, who's set to be delisted apparently, which is unbelievable. Do they look at someone like Denver Granger Barras? I wouldn't. He's no different to what we've got that aren't getting games. So Ethan Phillips would be one I would highly consider, but Brody Kemp would have been awesome. But overall, for the Saints trade period, we got pick 8 as compensation, and that's what my grading will be for the Saints, 8 out of 10. I'm really happy with how the Saints went about their business. Would have been nice to get Brody Kemp, and I would have given him a 10 out of 10. The Swans, they acquired pick 44 for Luke Parker and Jacob Casanti, which was the last trade. Parker's worth more than that, but he is older now. But Casanti hadn't played a game, but was a former first-round draft pick only 2 years ago. For the Swans, I give them a 4.5 out of 10. The Eagles, they brought in Liam Baker, Jack Graham, Matt Always, pick 12, 73, future first, second, and third, all tied to Hawthorn. Out, Tom Barras to Hawks, Jack Darling to North Melbourne, pick 3, 63 to future fourth, on trade to pick 68 from North to Carlton. So essentially, it's Baker, Graham, Always, and 12, and a future first and second for Barras and pick 3, which is awesome. I highly rate Matt Always. I think he's a really good player. Baker's serviceable, and you add in pick 12 and Graham, and a future first and second for Barras and pick 3. Overall, it looks a lot better than people are giving the Eagles credit for. And I'm going so far as to say I'm giving the Eagles a 9 out of 10 for their trade period. I thought they did really well. For the Bulldogs, in comes Matt Kennedy, pick 17, 25, and 45. Out went Bailey Smith to Geelong, Jack McRae to the Saints, and Caleb Daniel to North Melbourne. I like the acquisition of Matt Kennedy that I exclusively revealed first that Matt Kennedy would join the Bulldogs if Carlton would let him go. They did. I don't know why Carlton would let him go. He played every game. Very bloody good player, Matt Kennedy. Underrated. He's had his, New Guernsey on today. Saw the photo. Seems to fit him well. Will he get a game? But will he fall under the position that Jack McRae's fallen under? Not getting the game that when they deserve it. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens there. And the last team, including the Bulldogs, not including the Bulldogs, about the Bulldogs, you fool. But damn it. How do I grade the Dogs? It's a hard one. Kennedy, 17 and 25 for the 3 that went out. I can't say it's good. I really can't. I'm going to say a 5 out of 10 for the Bulldogs. Thank you for watching every trade wrap video I've done, the daily trade wrap videos, the ones I did before the trade period started until now. More content through the AFL and AFLW space and the draft and everything like that. So stay tuned to the channel. Thank you all. The most important thing of all to remember is go the Saints, and of course acknowledge me, the one, and all aboard the Filippo train. Then, now, forever together. And of course, all aboard the Watson train. Then, now, forever together. Go Saints!